In this problem, we're going to be taking a look at those same two equations from our last example, and we're going to be starting with our second equation. We want to solve the equation for y, because keep in mind when we are using our graphing calculators, our equations have to be typed in as y equals. So we're going to go ahead and subtract the x squared from both sides. And that's going to give us 2y equals a negative x squared. We'll divide both sides by 2, and we'll get the equation y equals negative x squared over 2. Now, when we're using our graphing calculator, we're going to be entering multiple equations in this example. So let's go ahead and make some extra notations here. We're going to call this equation y1, and keep in mind that represents the parabola that we were working with. We want to do the same thing for the second equation. We want to solve it for y. So we're going to go back and subtract x squared from both sides in that equation. That's going to give us y squared equals 8 minus x squared. And in order to solve for y, we're going to go ahead and take the square root of both sides in this equation. Taking the square root of y squared is the easy part. That just gives us a y value right back. When we take the square root of 8 minus x squared, nothing fancy here. Just keep in mind you're going to get both a positive and a negative version of that radical. Let's go ahead and make the same type of notations here. We're going to enter the positive square root of 8 minus x squared into our equation for y2. And keep in mind that that represents the top part of our circle. For our y3 value, we're going to enter the negative version of the radical, and that's going to represent the bottom part of our circle. Let's go ahead and take these three equations and go to our graphing calculator so we can take a look at how to enter them. So now we've got our graphing calculator, and we're going to enter each of those pieces in. So I've hit my y equals button, and let's go ahead and enter our first equation. We had negative x squared divided by 2. I'm going to go ahead and use my keypad up here and hit the down arrow so that I can enter my other two equations in there. For y2, we had the positive version of our square root sign. So square root of 8 minus x squared. And for y3, we have the negative version of that, negative radical 8 minus x squared. So this is what it should look like once you have all three of your equations typed in. And obviously we can go ahead and hit graph and take a look at the image that we have. Before I do that, I just want to make note, I'm going to click on my window button on my calculator, and you can go ahead and change the scales on your window if you would like to. I currently have mine set so that my x-min is -3. My x-max is set to a +3, and my scale is counting by 1. So that'll set up my x-axis for me. On my y-axis, the same thing. I'm going to go from -3 to a +3, and I'm going to be counting by 1s. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit my graph button. So here's kind of a image of what our graph is going to look like. Notice that the parabola is graphed in blue, and our circle is in two pieces. The red piece is the top part of our circle that represents our positive square root, and the black portion represents the negative square root that we were working with. And you can clearly see that it has two intersection points. Let's go ahead and use our graphing calculator to get the coordinates for the intersection on that left-hand side that you see. So I'm going to hit my second button and then my trace button up on top. We want to use this calc feature that you see in blue right above your trace button. And we're going to select number 5, the intersection. Now your calculator is going to take you through a series of 3 questions. It's going to ask you about the first curve, the second curve, and then it's going to ask you to make the guess so we can get the coordinates. So you'll notice that our calculator here says first curve. You can see the cursor there, right there at the origin, and you'll notice all the way up on top we have the y1 equation that we had typed in, which is our parabola, and that's what we want. So let's go look for that left intersection point. I'm going to use my keypad and left arrow over closer to that intersection. I don't necessarily need to be on it, I just need to be somewhere near it, and then I can go ahead and hit enter. Now you're going to notice your calculator is going to change on the bottom, and it asks you about the second curve. If you're looking at your cursor on the screen, you'll see that it's on the top part of our circle, and all the way up here on the left-hand top side is the equation y2 equals that positive square root of 8 minus x squared. That was what was representing our top part of the circle. Well, clearly our parabola doesn't intersect the top portion of the circle, and I don't want my cursor up there. I need it to be on the bottom portion of the circle, which is where the intersection point is. So I can use my keypad, and all I need to do is hit the down arrow once, and it's going to move my point down to that second curve. Notice it still says second curve down there at the bottom, but now up on top, it's talking about the equation for y3. That's where your cursor is currently sitting. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And then you're going to see the calculator, it's going to say guess. We want it to give us the coordinates of that intersection point, so we can go ahead and hit enter, and it's going to give us the coordinates -2, -2. That was one of the answers that we had in the previous video. And we can do the same type of thing to get the coordinates on the right-hand side. We're just going to go ahead and repeat the process. So I'm going to go back to my calculator and do second trace. I'm still going to pick number 5, the intersection. And let's go ahead and right arrow over closer to that right-hand intersection point. Notice that my calculator says first curve, and it's on my parabola. You can see the equation up there at the top. Okay, I don't necessarily have to be really close to that intersection point, just somewhere near it, and I can hit enter. My question changes to second curve. You see my cursor up there on the top portion of my circle on the red line, and it also has that red equation up there for y2. I don't want it to be on the top portion of the circle. I need it to be on the bottom portion. So I'm going to hit my down arrow, and now it moves my cursor down to the bottom part of that circle. Notice also on the top left, it now reads your y3 equation, which is what you want. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And then the calculator is going to say guess. Go ahead and hit enter one more time, and it should give us the other intersection point, which would be at 2, -2. So we have both coordinates now that we found in the previous example.